This is our last lesson in our unit on working and earning, and we're going to take a look at different pay schedules. So most of what we've focused on so far is how much you're going to get paid. This lesson is going to be a quick overview of when you get paid. And I know that most people think, as long as I'm paid, who cares when? The answer is, it doesn't really make a huge difference, but depending on what your pay schedule looks like, you have to kind of budget a little bit differently and set up your planning a little bit differently. So let's take a look at a couple examples here. And really what we're talking about with a pay schedule is how often employees are paid and how that affects the decisions they make about spending their money. So as an example, if I'm paid monthly, a whole bunch of people who've been paid monthly, especially when you're younger and you get your first job, they get this one giant month-long paycheck and then they think, oh my, I'm rich. I am so rich. And they go out and buy all kinds of cool stuff. And then they forget that there's about 3 weeks left until they get another one of these paychecks and that they still have to pay bills during that time. So getting paid every month may seem nice, but it makes budgeting a little bit trickier. Then there's people who get paid every week. Uh, that sounds great too for budgeting, except that sometimes you've got a big bill in the month, like mortgage. And if you've got a mortgage and you're like, well, I don't have to worry, I get another paycheck next week and my mortgage isn't due for a week and a half. Maybe your last paycheck of the month isn't enough to cover that mortgage bill. Or maybe you have another bill coming due at the same time. So you've got to be careful about saving money up for the bills that are coming in the future, not just the things that are due right now. So let's look at an example where we have Mo, who's 24 years old and lives alone. That's depressing. I feel bad for Mo already. But for the past 2 years, he's worked as a driving instructor. He earns $18 per 1 hour lesson and is paid for the week's work following on the following Friday. So it's not like he finishes work on Friday and gets paid for the work that he did up to that moment, because usually pays are postponed by a week or 2 weeks, depending on the job, because the employer can't make your paycheck, 3 minutes after you're done your shift. It usually takes them a few days to get the actual paperwork completed and all that stuff done. So whatever work you do this week, you'll get paid for next week, a week away. Before we go any further, what kind of method of pay is Mo earning? Based on the previous lessons we've done, he gets $18 per 1 hour lesson. So is he paid hourly or is he paid piecework? And the correct answer is it doesn't really matter what she's paid. Um, but I would argue piecework because if, for instance, the hour lesson ends up going a little long and works an hour and 10 minutes, he's probably still getting $18. So he's probably getting paid per lesson as opposed to per hour, even if they are hourly lessons. Anyway, we've got some information about Mo's earnings for the last few weeks. So on the week beginning Monday, June 5th, and I don't even remember what year this is from, but we have a little calendar down there. Put June in here so we can think about nice summer months and nice warm months. We don't have to think about what's outside right now. And on June 5th, or starting the week of June 5th, he's going to do 44 in-car lessons. So we want to figure out his earnings. Now, I'm not going to write it down, but I'm going to say it. He works 44 lessons at $18 each. That's 44 times 18. He's going to make $792 that week. I mentioned before, we're going to get into this more next unit, but of course he's going to have some kind of deductions and stuff. I don't think we're too concerned about that right now. We're just trying to see how these numbers work. The next week, 56 lessons. He's had some tiring days. So 56 times 18 is 1008. And I'm going to guess that Mo is not getting overtime on this because he's getting paid probably by the individuals who are actually getting him to do driving lessons. And they're not required to care how much else because they're only hiring him for 1 hour each. Technically, he's working for 56 different people. 52 hours times 18 gives us 936. And 43 times 18 is 774. All right, so we know Mo is a hard worker anyway. He's definitely pulling a lot of shifts here. what's the date he'll receive his pays? So I'm going to actually just change colors for a second. Oop, I lied. I'm going to open the document back up for a second. Oh, there it is. Now I'm going to change colors by hitting the right button. And I'm going to put down on here that the week that starts on June 5th, he's going to finish that week on, well, if he finishes on Friday, maybe he works on weekends. I'm not sure. But he's going to make or get paid for that week on the 16th, the following Friday. So even though we see June 5th there, he's actually not getting paid until June 16th, which seems really far away. So June 16th, the 12th will be received on the 23rd. The 19th will be received on the 30th. And the one that he starts in the last Monday of June actually is not going to be received until July 7th. So that's a little ways away. Okay, so what I'm getting at with these questions is that even though it looks like he's working 4 weeks in June, he can't bank on having 4 paychecks in June. I mean, I guess I'm assuming he worked in May anyway, but he's not going to receive one of those paychecks until the 7th of July. So if he has bills that come due on June 30th or July 1st, he's going to have to back up a little bit and start setting some money aside for those, because that last paycheck from starting June 26th doesn't come in until a week into July. So circle Mo's pay dates on the calendar below. Okay, so his 4 pay dates are there, and there. And I mean, I could continue to circle the other Fridays as well, assuming that he still continues to work into the future. And it says he worked there for 2 years, so I could go in the past. But the first pay that Mo received in June was June 2nd. All right. Mo's rent is due the first of each month. His car insurance payment is due on the third of each month. Why does he have to watch the calendar and always plan ahead for these expenses? Okay, again, if I look at, let me switch to a different color again. If I look at the 1st of July as being the day that the mortgage is due, or sorry, his rent is due, and his car payment, insurance payments on the 3rd, well, his pay that he's going to get immediately before that one is the 30th. But those are probably two of his more significant costs. So that means that his pay for the June 30th paycheck may not be enough. So his last pay is June 30th. So that's the last one he gets before those are due, but that may not be enough to cover it. So he may need more money from June 23rd. His June 23rd paycheck right here. Now, the neat thing about the June 23rd paycheck is that's from work started on June 12th. Wow, that seems like it's pretty far back. So what this is getting at is that in order to pay for his stuff in July, he's actually got to start looking at what he's making starting on June 12th to make sure that he makes enough that week and the week after to make enough on his checks for the 23rd and 30th to cover his bills on the 1st and the 3rd. So you can't just say, well, I've got one paycheck coming up or 2 paychecks coming up. That's plenty. You've got to actually work out which one actually will give you enough going back in time. And then you've got to worry about things too, like, oh, I've set enough money aside to cover my bills on the 1st and the 3rd, but I may want to eat those weeks as well. I may want to be able to put gas in my car those weeks as well. So there's other costs that come into play in addition to just those two. For question 3, would being paid bi-weekly make Mo's planning any easier? Explain why or why not. I'm going to talk about this briefly, but I'm just going to write down the word maybe. So the reason that it often makes it easier to budget if you're paid less often. So for instance, if you're paid monthly, or if I got, and I'm glad this doesn't happen because I'd be a nightmare, but if I was paid annually, if I was paid once a year, just here's a big chunk of money, here you go, you're done. What I could do then is just say, okay, I'm going to just pay all my mortgage bills for the year, all my insurance bills for the year, all of my internet bills for the year, all of my cable bills for the year, pay all those things off in advance, and then just say, I have this much money left. It has to last me a year. So now that requires me to be a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? Conscientious about my spending. It means I have to be a little bit more mature about my spending decisions. I can't just say, wow, I get 10,000 left. I'm going to go buy a bunch of like video games because that money has to last a year. So the longer it is between paychecks, usually the easier it is to budget, but the more responsible you have to be with the money you have because it has to stretch. So even though you may have a big chunk sitting in your bank account, if it has to last for a long period of time, you have to make it last a long period of time. So does it make it easier? I would argue yes, but depending on whether or not you're responsible with your money, you may argue no. I'd rather get paid weekly. I'd rather it come in small amounts that I can't go on a spending spree uh, every now and again. And would being paid on the last day of each month make his planning any easier? Explain why or why not. So if he's getting paid monthly and on the last day of the month, I would say based on where his big bills seem to be, getting paid the last day of the month would be really convenient for him. So I'm just going to put down probably for the same reasons we just talked about. Now, that doesn't mean that you can do this on a test because your test doesn't come with a 5-minute audio explanation of how things work. Um, but we have talked about this verbally, so we have answered the questions. They're just not written down on the paper. Now let's take a look at Eve. Eve is a kindergarten teacher who is paid semi-monthly. What does semi-monthly mean? Well, here's a phrase that you may be familiar with. So if this here is a circle, what do you call this? This is a semicircle. So semi means half. So she's paid each half of a month. Now, most people want to make the argument that that means she's paid every other week, which is not quite true. Because as we saw before, there are not exactly 4 weeks in a month. So if you get paid bi-weekly, bi-weekly means every 2 weeks, the same way that bicycle means two wheels. You get paid every other Friday. If you get paid semi-monthly, you probably get paid on something like the first of the month and the 15th of the month, or the 15th and the last of the month, depending on how things work out. But you usually get paid on specific dates. So in this case, she's paid on the 15th and the last day of each month, and each pay she receives is approximately $1,600. So calculate Eve's approximate pay per month. Well, we can actually calculate it exactly using math, except that since the pay itself is approximate, our answer will be approximate. But she gets 2 pays a month at $1,600 each. So she gets $3,200 a month, which sounds like a lot of money, but that's something that could be a little bit tricky to live off of. Lots of people do it, but that doesn't mean it's easy. All right, now we got to talk about Eve's fixed expenses. And fixed expenses are ones that don't tend to change from month to month, or at least don't change very much. So for instance, my electricity use does change from month to month, but it's usually about the same amount. I do predict it to go up in the summer and down in the winter because I have air conditioning. Likewise, my gas bill goes down in the summer because I'm not running a furnace. I just have my hot water heater, and up in the winter. So my utilities overall, when I add the two together, stay pretty constant. Something that would not be a fixed cost, for instance, could be gas, how much gas I use up in a month. Some months I drive a lot, some I don't. Um, how much I spend on clothing would not be fixed every month. I mean, I might go 6 months without buying a single piece of clothing and then buy a nice jacket and a couple pair of jeans and spend $500 in one month. So not all expenses are fixed, but those are usually where we start with what we have to pay for. So there are some examples here of things that are Eve's expenses and are fixed costs. So we have her mortgage, her car payment, her home and car insurance, her student loan, her life insurance, and that's it. But we have a total we have to figure out here. So let's just start by calculating the total. And all we're going to do is we're going to add up all of those in our calculator and try to do it accurately without hitting any buttons wrong. So try that now while I'm doing it and see if you get the same number I do. Okay, I got a number. Hopefully yours looks like mine. Hopefully mine's correct. And I'm getting $1,479. So she has almost $1,500 of fixed expenses per month. So roughly half of her pay. A little bit less, but almost half of her pay. And we have things here that are due on specific dates. For instance, her mortgage is due on the 1st, her car payment's due on the 10th, and so on. So the question is, which paycheck do we use to pay each of these? So a lot of people think you pay your first half of the month's expenses with your first paycheck of the month. But in her case, her first paycheck doesn't come till the 15th. So that means her first pay of the month. Oh, I should put down the actual date chosen, not the whether it's the first or the second or the, well, there's only two options there. So this is going to be her pay from the 15th. She can pay that one. And her last one she'll pay with the 15th. And the 22nd one she can pay with the 15th. Now the 1st and the 10th, paying with the 15th, it's too late. Those dates are already passed. She can't go back in time and pay what she owed already, which means that those are going to be paid from the last day of the month. So that makes sense, right? If she's got a bill due on the 1st, it's going to come from the paycheck she got last month, not this month. Okay, so that seems reasonable. Now when we do that, you know what? I'm not going to really write things for the reason for the date choice. And the reason for that is because we're going to kind of talk through it. And we kind of just did. The ones on the 1st and the 10th have to come out of last month's stuff. Now, here's one little problem, and I just want you to kind of think about it. If we take a look at this, if this paycheck here, the last paycheck of the month, is going to have to be for 725 plus 298. So she gets a paycheck for $1,600 and 1,023 of it is going towards paying those two bills. Now, her paycheck from the 15th is from those three dates, and those bills total 114 plus 237 plus 105, and that means she pays 456 from those. Okay, do you see any problems with why this might be a bit of an issue? She pays $1,023 out of one of her $1,600 paychecks, and she pays $456 out of her other $1,600 paycheck. It doesn't seem very balanced, does it? I mean, ideally what we'd do here is say, well, her total bills are $1,479. Half of that would be about $740. So we'd like to split her bills $740. So I'm just going to do this one right here, what if, what if instead of paying it the breakdown that we did, we started paying our car payments in advance? So I'm paying for the 10th, or the car payment on the 10th, not from the last paycheck of the month, the one that came on like the 30th or the 31st, but from the previous month's 15th. So I'm paying that one way in advance. But when I pay that one way in advance, then I'm doing 725 out of that paycheck. And if I put all of those together, 298 plus 114 plus 237 plus 105 is $754. So at least if I'm paying that in advance, I kind of have a more balanced way of having leftover money. So I've got about the same amount to spend on food and entertainment and everything else in a week that I would otherwise. Now, I'm not saying one of these is better than the other. Maybe she's just responsible with her money, and when she gets the 1,023, she saves some of it for the next 2 weeks after that pay period's done. Um, maybe she buys all, that's the paycheck she buys clothing from, or that's the paycheck where she buys food for the month from, or something like that. So she arranges her bills so that they fall into proper places. But again, this is all personal preference. As long as the idea behind this is as long as you're thinking ahead long enough that you don't run out of money, you're okay. It's really hard to actually do this in real life, like as a class, as a test question, because there's so many kind of personal ways that you could do this. So as long as you have a general understanding of this lesson, you're going to be okay. I'm not going to ask anything too detailed. So question 7, why is this type of financial planning easier for someone who is paid semi-monthly rather than weekly? So again, most bills are kind of on set dates each month, and so being paid on set dates is helpful. Since most bills are on set dates, getting paid on set dates is good. So what I mean by that is if you're paid every Friday, that might seem great, except that one month, the last Friday of the month might fall on the 29th, and then you've got that paycheck to pay for bills that come on the 30th or the 1st. And sometimes the last paycheck of the month might come on the 25th, 24th, and then you actually don't have that, or the you don't get another paycheck until after the first of the next month has come along. So yeah. Other expenses Eve might have, this again, pretty wide open. There's a whole lot there. I'd like you to think about not necessarily what Eve might have, but what you would have. So if you were living on your own in a similar situation, what kinds of things would you have to pay for besides these? Um, Big ones are obviously going to be food, clothing, entertainment, and entertainment can fall into a whole bunch of different things. So whether you consider entertainment to be going to the movie theater, going out for dinner, buying a Blu-ray, buying a pack of cigarettes, like there's a whole lot of things that you could spend on your entertainment budget, and you'd be more specific than entertainment if you'd like. The more specific you are, the easier it is for you to budget. Like the easier it is for you to see where your money's going and how to rearrange it so that you can maybe have a little bit more for later. And then there's other things that people don't normally think about. So there's things like house repairs, which no one thinks about until it happens. So your furnace breaks down, or your roof needs repair, or the whole number of things that could happen there. Your washing machine breaks, refrigerator goes out, who knows? So home repairs is a big one. I think I worked it out once that in my lifetime, I spend about 5 cents per day on bathroom fan repair. It doesn't happen very often, But when it does, it costs me, 100 bucks or whatever to replace the bathroom fan. And I've had to replace several of them, so it happens. There could be other costs, as in we have car payment on there, we have car insurance on there, but we don't have gas. And gas is usually helpful if you own a car. Car repairs. Oh, we're going to spend some time talking about cars and their costs later in the course because it's not pretty. But again, you think about what other things you might spend money on and fill them in there as well, and I think we're good. Okay, this one doesn't have any practice problems on it. This would be a good time to finish up anything from previous lessons that you may not have done yet, um, or at least give you a short day so you've got less to do now. So the point now is get done what you need to get done, and I think we're pretty much finished up this unit. So the next time you'll see me in a video will probably be next unit. And that's not true. I might produce some other little thing to explain the evaluations, but at some point you're going to see me in a video. But for right now, I think all we have to do is a little bit of an assignment and or a quiz. Anyway, we will see you next time. Good luck and bye.